Good evening, everyone, or good morning, depending on what part of the world you're tuning in from. It's with great pleasure tonight that we are going to hear from Kenny Schachter, who's an artist, a writer, an art dealer, and a curator. And most importantly for us, he's a member of the SVA BFA Fine Arts department. And he will be shedding some light on this new kind of art product called NFT, which has hit the market with a giant roar. So, without further ado, I'm going to turn you over to our guest speaker, Kenny Schachter.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I am going to share my screen. Okay, so TNT, not since TNT, which stands for trinitrotoluene, better known as dynamite, not since those three letters signified a stick of dynamite have we seen another three letters with such an incendiary effect on the art world, and that would be non-fungible tokens, which is what we're going to talk about. A few disclaimers. Number one, I'm no tech expert, to put it mildly. It's a miracle that I'm able to get on Zoom and share my screen, yet even turn my computer on. So I'm probably going to make a lot of mistakes, which would be nothing unusual. If any of you has been in my classes before, you can attest to that. But I'm going to do my best to present really both sides of what has become one of the most polarizing, probably in my 30 years in the art world, I can't recall anything more polarizing than this concept of non-fungible tokens. And really, in essence, the underlying concept is so simple. Well, first of all, this talk is for your benefit, and it's only going to be an hour. And I never really tweeted very much because I can't really think in 140 characters. If you've ever heard me talk on a podcast, I tend to ramble, which I am surely going to engage in now. Luckily, this is in Clubhouse, so it's going to be fast and there won't be much interruptions. But also, for some reason, Twitter is also the platform of choice for the tech sector, and along with Discord, which is that image in the lower screen. And that is where the digital crowd gathers to discuss things and talk about what's happening. So I've written 3 articles on NFTs for ArtNet, all within the past 4 weeks. So it would be foolish for me to repeat all of that stuff. So you can, when we're done here, or if you get bored enough, you could do it while I'm talking. But on my website, kennyschachter.art, all of the ArtNet articles, along with the glossary of terms, are all there. So you can access all of that quite easily. And that's why I'm really not going to try to retrace all of the material that I've already covered very in-depthly, if that's a word. And if it's not, well, we'll go with it. So let's get into it. So a lot of the hoo-ha, and there's been just an immense amount of polemics, debate, name calling, trolling, crazy. Like I said, I've never seen anything create such debate in the art world in my 3 decades of being involved. And I guess it boils down to just a kind of simple resistance to change that we have as humans. And also, like, for 180 years, people have been debating whether or not photography is quote unquote art. And thankfully, I'm not going to be around to hear the extent of the NFT debate play itself out, because this is clearly something that's not going to abate anytime soon. So I guess I'm going to start really with all of the negatives and try to cover as much as I can in terms of what the outcry has largely been based upon in terms of the underlying arguments. But first, a few more generalities. People talk now about the real art world, the traditional art world, the gallery system versus the digital world. or NFTs. And Nodler, of all galleries, since right now it's a subject of a documentary called The Big Fake, which is quite an interesting documentary, opened in 1948, at first as an outpost of a French print gallery, and they opened independently in 1860. And that's pretty much the first gallery in America for presenting artworks without also being like a framing shop, for instance. So really the whole system of galleries is relatively new, only a little bit in excess of 150 years. Now, for those of you that are as old as myself, or nearly as old, probably not too many, but you see a sheet of slides, which up until JPEGs well into the 90s, the only way to communicate what an artist was doing visually was through putting these little 1.5-inch square photographic representations of art in a sleeve, sending it to galleries, and the galleries holding it up in the light. And basically, if you weren't in a city like New York, London, Cologne at the time, not so much Rome or Paris in the 90s, it was impossible to communicate what somebody was doing visually without actually being in the city. And I've been writing and making art since then, since around late 80s, early 90s. Smartphone, I never really considered myself a writer, mainly because no one ever read anything I wrote. And that was really until smartphones came around in 2007, and then Instagram, which for me, up until I did my first NFTs in September. I found out about it in September and did my first pieces with the website Nifty Gateway on December 7th. But Instagram began in 2010, and up until September, when I first became aware of NFTs, the existence of them, I would lecture, and I wrote an article for Johann Koenig's magazine in Berlin that Instagram was this kind of revolutionary wrecking ball that served to democratize the contemporary art world, in as much as you no longer needed to rely on slides, photographic representation, or being in a nexus, a geographical nexus of where the art world capitals are. So really, for me, I thought in my lifetime, I wouldn't really get to see something that would go way beyond the scope of Instagram, and I'll touch upon it a little later, but I know of literally dozens and dozens of people that have forged relationships, artists getting their work seen, buying artists, selling their work. I bought directly from numerous artists on Instagram, and it's been instrumental in serving as a platform within which for artists to get the word out and communicate and help get a foothold into the dissemination system of art. And Twitter, again, 2006, around the time Facebook started, I guess. But really, for me and the visual art community, Instagram, up until now, has been pretty much the most kind of profound break in the underlying system that governs the art market. What are NFTs? They're really just a method to authenticate and a delivery system to sell digitally based art. You see a piece of, there's a singer, Selena. I made computer prints on paper and vinyl. This was a piece from 1993. Below is sort of an homage to Vito Acconci masturbating in a public space. I won't get into that too much, but that's sort of like a faux library from when I was in law school. And there was a computer animation. And this was from a show in 1993 called I Was Born Like This. But really, the point is that these NFTs are really, it's nothing, really. It has nothing to do with the underlying notion of what is art, what is digital art, what is all this Beeple conversation and all this money bullshit is really nothing more than that. It's just all rhetoric, because really you're just talking about how do I sell my digital art when selling, I've been embedding digital videos in my articles for the last 10 years, and never in my wildest dreams did I ever think that I would be able to have a marketplace within which to regularly sell them and make a living from it. And I had my first drop, as they call it, the lingo, with Nifty Gateway in December in 2020. And again, I've pretty much never done anything for money in my career, to the consternation of my family. But when I found out from an artist, a digital artist, Olive Allen, brought up the fact that she was doing NFTs. She explained it to me. Initially, back in September, I turned my head sideways like a schnauzer that doesn't understand the command. I had no idea. And then she mentioned that Kenny Schachter had done a few. And I thought, well, we share 9 letters in our names. He's a friend of mine. We're around the same age. He's a bit older. And I thought, well, I should do them too. So she put me in touch with one of the curators, Tommy Kimmelman, at Nifty Gateway. And I released three pieces. One was a unique video. One was an edition of 5. One was an edition of 10. And without much, I've learned throughout my career to have less than 0 expectations, and I'm never really disappointed, since that's usually been the way that things pan out. But yeah, I sold them and I made a few $1,000s, and I was very happy. I didn't really know about all the windfalls that were happening at the time, and I surely wasn't expecting that to happen with me. But it just struck me instantaneously that this was going to be something tremendously impactful in how digital art could be bought and sold, accessed, etc. And I wrote, like, I'm always averse to people writing their prognostications and forecasts at the end of the year. But after just having this very pleasant experience, I connected my checking account to my Nifty Gateway account. And what I found out when I was doing these projects, the artist gets a residual in perpetuity, and typically 10%, but you can elect to get it to a higher percentage. And I received $4,000 from the sales of my works, and then about another 1,000 or so from resales. There are 2 groups of people that these things primarily sell to. One group are kids that sort of buy these things immediately as they drop, the way that they would buy some Yeezys or a pair of sneakers. And typically they will instantly introduce them back into the marketplace, and not unlike someone who buys a Robert Nava painting from a gallery today, which is for sale at a tremendous discount to what it would trade on the secondary market. But there's a lot less protest to your art being bought and sold within a heartbeat when you're getting 10% of the proceeds. So anyway, I wrote an article actually about Instagram that was in the art newspaper on January 4th. And unbeknownst to me, they picked up this post that I did on Instagram, and I had my 10 forecasts. And one of them was that NFTs would be huge. And again, like, I wasn't thinking, I never really, even though I write a lot about the art market and the machinations of the art system, I mean, it sounds crazy because I'm always voraciously hoarding art. I've done a series of auctions called The Hoarder at Sotheby's online, but I don't really I love art like a lunatic. I mean, I'll show you where I'm sitting before we leave, and I'm surrounded by over 100 small pieces in the office I'm sitting in, and every single day I rub my nose against art. So like I said, I mean, some of the artists that have been most significant in my life, artists like Paul Thek and Vito Acconci, both of them died destitute, and to this day don't have very much in terms of an art market. And again, like, I wasn't really thinking about the money. I had a release, I got my 5,000, it was sent to my checking account, and then I wrote this little article, and then I tried to do it again with Nifty Gateway, and I got rejected. And until Georgina Adam in the art newspaper did a follow-up article from my piece that appeared on the 4th of January, and they used one of my images from Nifty Gateway to lead off the article. And I called up Nifty and said, can you please let me back on? And they agreed to give me another opportunity, because you can imagine, like, there were some earlier drops in the fall, in October, of Beeple, of course, and things started to go for a crazy amount of money. And NFTs have been around since 2017, 2018, even a bit earlier in various forms. So at the time I wrote my first article for ArtNet, which was February 22nd, I was editing my article, which came out the following day, and I had 5 pieces that were released. When you release prints on platforms, they're either unique, or they could be limited editions, or they can have what's called an open edition, and for a period of time, they sell as many as they can, and after that time is finished, let's say 5 minutes, that caps off the edition, and that determines what the edition size will be. So while I was editing my second article, again, it was all about NFTs, because from a very kind of intuitive way. I just felt, as someone who's made digital art for 30 years practically, it seemed to me like this could really have a marked impact on my art making life. And another thing is, like, the art world is so like condescending is the word, or it's just very much into pigeonholing people. And because I'm not like an art dealer, a curator, a teacher, a writer, and an artist by choice. I would definitely drop the dealing thing because I'm awful at it. But I do that for economic necessity and to pay my bills. And something that's really cool about, for lack of a better academic term, in the NFT digital art world, they don't prejudge you according to like what you do, how you do it. They don't really care. They just look at what they see. If it's appealing to their eye, or they think they can make some dough off of it, they go for it. So there's a lot less judgmental mindset that you see in this community. And I'm sure many of you have heard that Saturday Night Live just had a skit about NFTs on the TV show this Saturday. And I'm not sure about you, but I cannot recall a past art phenomenon of any stripe that was actually played out on a television show. And I'm not being lazy, but it was about a 7-minute segment, but in this one little snippet, which is 28 seconds, if you really focus on the lyrics of this song, you will have the whole NFT situation explained to you. So here it goes.
Who, me? Well, I wasn't really paying attention, but if I had to explain NFTs, I'd probably say that, hey, here's the thing about NFTs. It's a non-fungible token, you see. Non-fungible means that it's unique. There can only be one like you and me. NFTs are insane. Built on a blockchain, a digital ledger of transactions. It records information on what's happening. When it's minted, you can sell its art. And this concludes my rapping part.
There you go, in a nutshell. Really, the NFT is just reducing your artwork into code that gets embedded on the blockchain. And it's not the actual artwork that's on the blockchain. It is a smart contract, and the smart contract points to the cloud, to a URL website where your image is taken. You may have heard that a writer in the New York Times, Kevin Roose, recently wrote an op-ed piece in the New York Times, was in the business section, about NFTs, and then he proceeded to sell his article as an NFT, and it went for $562,000. So sorry about this long text screen, but maybe you should just take a photo of it, or this will be reproduced. This will be on YouTube, the talk. So I'm not gonna read it, obviously. But in the article, I believe he explains the whole process, that really what you're doing, it's a digital collected stamp with a unique bit of code, the digital collectible on the blockchain, which is merely just a ledger system. But there are many, many decentralized computers that host this information, and it's not controlled by any central authority. And this is the kind of theory that underlines all cryptocurrencies, the difference being that Ethereum, which is what most of the NFTs trade on, has the capacity to have a contract piggybacked on it. The smart contract is very, 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 very simple. It's right up in the upper right-hand corner. You have the name of the token, the name of the piece, how many are in the edition, could it be divisible or fractionalized. Initially, when you mint an NFT, I just did one 5 minutes ago on Foundation, it goes to the artist, and then from there is a constant record of provenance that is always public. And this is one of the great kind of distinguishing characteristics of an NFT. You could always track the provenance, and the authenticity is assured. In this article, there was one, I call it a factual inaccuracy, because when Kevin describes the process of uploading his NFT, he said that he had to upload an image of his column to a decentralized storage service called the Interplanetary File System, and he then had to mint a token to that file. That's not true, because all of these sites make it so easy. They do charge you, you get charged gas fees, which are transaction fees, because I'll get into it a little later, but all of this computing consumes a lot of energy right now, too much for a lot of people. For most people, it is destructive to the environment overall now. But again, this is the nascent early stages of the technology, and I assure you that this problem is going to be dealt with, and dealt with relatively swiftly. There are already solutions to this problem that we'll get into. So anyway, and the great part is that the artists get a residual right, that it's the sites within which the platforms that you release these tokens on, and we'll get into some of them as well a little later, and they account for every time these artworks are bought and sold, automatically 10% of the proceeds just simply get deposited in your account on those websites and ends up in your wallet. So to get started, you simply go to one of the wallet companies like MetaMask and start an account. I really had never bought a cryptocurrency in my entire life. I had a friend who was gracious enough to drop 1 ETH into my wallet once I started a wallet. And then I went to OpenSea, which is a wide open platform which has no curatorial gatekeeping, and you can just post away. Not to get too much into the technical side, besides namely for the fact that I have no idea what I'm talking about, which is nothing unusual, but IPFS, this interplanetary file system, is one of the systems when you tokenize your art, the URL, like where it's stored in the cloud, is what the IPFS is. And there have been some instances where, let's say you release an NFT on a particular platform, and that platform goes out of business. It could be, again, I'm going to start to launch into all of the objections to NFTs and why they're the plague, why they're this horror that we should all be fearful of. Mainly, it could happen that, let's say you release your NFT on website XYZ, and ultimately XYZ goes bankrupt. Surely there are literally platforms that are launching. I mean, by the time I finish talking, if I ever do, there'll be another 50 platforms that have dropped. And surely there's going to be consolidation, and there's going to be failures within this group of platforms. So conceivably, if a platform goes out of business and doesn't pay their storage fees for the interplanetary, sounds so like outer space, but it's just really renting space on a storage system. If they go out of business, your NFT could point to zero, and there could be nothing there. And you'll look at your wallet and you'll see just a blank square. So there's a new technology which came online recently called Arweave. And again, take a picture of this page. If anyone has any questions that we don't have time for at the end of this discussion, you could DM me. I will pretty much do my best to reply to every single comment. Don't ask me to get your NFTs posted and get you onto Nifty Gateway, because I could barely get myself back on there. After I had my last drop, February 22nd, my article came out the next day, and I ended up selling a great deal, like between 500 and 600 pieces, due to the open editions that they issued, and did really well. But even then, I'm not allowed back onto Nifty Gateway for another 3 months, even though I've asked them repeatedly for an exception. But Nifty Gateway is a site where you have to be curated onto the platform, and they decide when and how your work will be administered. So one of the biggest, most common objections to NFTs are the amount of energy that they consume. And this rings true for Bitcoin, and it's a little disconcerting just looking at my presentation and talking to myself. But so energy consumption is one of the most obvious drawbacks to this whole phenomenon. And it's not even the NFTs that are using the energy, it's the Ethereum network itself. And as of now, NFTs are just a minor drop in the bucket, and I'm not condoning it, and I'm not rationalizing. But again, like, you know, cars, by 2035, there's going to be no gas-powered cars on much of the roads in this country. And this is back to the initial image about change, and also in relationship to how subsequent, I mean, the art world should be rejoicing. I can't understand why people generally in the professional art world that we know and live in, much of us on this discussion, why they should be celebrating and dancing in the street, because one of the things that NFTs have unexpectedly introduced into the art world is a whole new constituency of collectors. of patrons, whether there's as much dirty deeds going on in the art world. It's funny because there's been a lot of people have raised their arms and complained about the monetization of NFTs. It's just a currency. It's the dark this and tax avoidance and money laundering, which pretty much sums up the traditional art world as we know it to date. But just the way that cars are going electric, which took quite a long time, I'm fairly certain that within a relatively short period of time of say no more than a year, there's going to be a crossover, a switch to other modes of minting NFTs. This was a Twitter post that a ginormous cause, who's the subject of a retrospective at the Brooklyn Museum, one of these ginormous 30-foot high wood sculptures probably uses as much as every NFT, energy as every NFT that's been minted to date. A lot of the times they use hydro power stations in China and various other regions. But again, if any transaction on the blockchain consumes an inordinate amount of electricity and resources, it's wrong and it needs to be dealt with. And I'm fairly certain that it will be dealt with sooner rather than later. And again, there's been no art fairs for a year. Imagine how much energy has been saved. That's why you see dolphins swimming up and down like the East River in New York City. I mean, this is one crate that all the paper, all the plastic, all the stuffing, the boxes that get thrown away. I mean, after one use, it's among the most wasteful situations fathomable. We've lived in a terribly kind of abusive society, which accounts for why we're all going to be flooded or melted in the not too distant future due to global warming. But these ginormous crates that ship all over the world, art fairs, there would have been 260 or 360 art fairs if everything didn't grind to a halt because of COVID. And now there was just a tiny handful, like maybe 70 that were just more local events. So the art world it's pretty hypocritical for the art world to use this environmental failure alone to discredit NFTs. It's absurd because the art world has a notoriously lousy track record when it comes to treating the environment and respect for the environment. And again, I'm not using this as any kind of rationalization. And in terms of what could be a solution, there is something, I'm not going to get into all the details, mainly because I barely understand it myself. I'm not going to bore you any more than I have already and will in the next 30 minutes. But there is a new system which is called proof of stake, where instead of computers having to engage in an enormous amount of numerical crunching, which is taking up all the power, the miners would have to just sort of put crypto into escrow, and that would be a way that everything has to be in checks and balances according to all the different participants, because it's this kind of self-regulating system. So they are very much hard at work on a new version of Ethereum. They've been talking about it for years, but hopefully it'll come out within the next year. And there's already some cryptocurrencies like Polkadot that are utilizing these new, more energy efficient designs that are secure, guarantee decentralization, and yet better for the environment. So these are some of the systems already that are coming to the market. OnFlow is one of the platforms that uses less energy. And again, you'll be able to just screenshot this now, or it'll be on YouTube after this talk is over. Then Tezos is another crypto, which also has a much lighter impact, smaller footprint in the environment. So these things are in the works. You can't just write off NFTs because of the energy consumption. We're going to look at one artist who refuses to mint on the Ethereum because she's so conscious of the environment, and she's not alone. So this system is going to self-correct. I'm pretty confident. So you've seen a bunch of little shops where you walk in and there's nobody there, and it's the honor system. And you're expected to pay the money into a little cup or jar, whatever it is. And in a sense, the art world is very much like that. And some of the problems that could be foreseen or have been discussed and debated have to do with you could mint anybody's art. And of course, they're going to have to start policing this. I mean, there has been some what they call grift in the NFT sector of people, printing images from museums without their consent and trying to sell them, or people stealing the identity of other artists and selling it. But at the same time, when it comes to the artists themselves, sure, I could release a piece and say it's an edition of one, and then go to another platform and mint the same piece 150 times. But then again, Richard Prince can just run another silk screen for Millionaire Nurse, or now it should be called Billionaire Nurse or Crypto Nurse. But what's to stop Cindy Sherman from printing up a few more film stills from her most highly regarded series? This is a video of one of my heroes, Vito Acconci, and all of this stuff is available freely available on the internet. Look, you could buy high-res images of any work of art and replicate it. And whether it's the painting from a museum, photography, video art. There used to be this really cool guy in Texas back in the 90s, and he would send you bootleg Matthew Barney films. All you would have to do in turn was send him another artwork that was an art video, and it was this kind of barter system, bootleg barter, where you would get one piece of art without having to pay for it in return for sending another one. And this kind of mentality, I'm not condoning it because I make video art, but at the same time, all of my videos are free on Vimeo and YouTube. So it's very important to me, like with my writing and with everything I do, accessibility is so very important to me. I could have a million times charged subscription for my writing, and I guess I'm not supposed to talk about it, but I'm gonna, just between us, 1,000 of my friends, the site that I do most of my writing for is putting up a paywall, and I'm not supposed to say anything, but I'm really not too excited about people having to pay for my articles because that misses the entire point. The point is that art should be accessible, and that has nothing to do with ownership. So really, I mean, the fact is that every video I've ever made has been, you could watch them now for free on YouTube or Vimeo. And at the same time, some people prefer to own these things. And by all means, I'm very happy to help in any way that I can. I mean, it's funny because over the last couple of years, I've sold compilations of my videos and just basically on a memory stick. And in some respects, like, I kind of feel guilty because I feel like, are you sure? Are you really sure you want to pay for this when you could simply watch it? But, that's really what this whole system is based on. People, since art came off the wall of a cave, it's been coveted. And this is simply another way to collect it and to buy it and sell it. And the person who seems to benefit the most are the artists. And they have this residual in perpetuity where, we get 10% of the proceeds on every resale, which in one fell swoop wipes out much of the concern about short-term buyers and sellers, of which there are, more flippers than collectors these days. Okay, this is a piece I just made, and I happened to just release it while I was getting ready for this talk. And that logo of the fox is from MetaMask, and MetaMask is the wallet that you have to open in order to get started collecting and buying and selling and making NFTs. So in this case, there is a pickpocket, and the fact is that another issue is security. So, look, whenever there is money on the landscape, there's going to be criminal intent. That is also human nature. Humans love to hoard stuff. We love to collect stuff. It's like a disease. Especially, I have a bad case of it still, though I'm trying to combat it. But at the same time, a lot of people have been jacked, have their accounts completely wiped out. Either they forget their passwords. You get these passwords, and pretty much the most foolproof way to protect yourself is to write it down on a piece of paper and then go put it in a safety deposit box in a bank. And that's what this whole system of cryptocurrency is meant to sidestep the whole central banking system. And yet you have to find a place to store your written passwords so you can access your accounts. So this is sort of making fun of the fact that, I mean, again, this is something to take a shot of, but it's just funny because even when ordering a ledger, which I'll show you, that's a picture of a ledger, it's cold storage. It's basically, it's like a miniature Freeport in your pocket, and it's just a tiny little stick called the ledger that you can store your stuff in. And when I read this journal, this report about crypto security best practices, it makes me think of Oliver Stone and his wild array of conspiracy theories. Because if this is just ordering a ledger, which I just did on Amazon, it says never use your personal cell number, don't use your address. I mean, it makes everyone, it's like we're all drug dealers, criminals trying to avoid the most obvious kind of discernment of who we are and what we're up to. But it seems pretty mad. And also, like, when you have, they say that you should use Chrome as a browser instead of Safari because it's more secure. And on the right, this long page is about segregating your browser and your wallet, and I mean, it's a bit over the top, and it's also kind of like dark web and what you think about when you think about the worst aspects of the crypto universe. But you have to be careful. I mean, I think more than being hacked, you're more likely just to forget your password than anything else. You get a seed phrase, which is anywhere between 12 and 24 words. And that's really the key to preserving the integrity of your account. And that's really the thing that you mustn't lose no matter what. So during the gold rush in 1848, the funniest thing was that it was much more common for the people that were providing all the paraphernalia for the miners than the people that were searching for gold. And again, you know, you can't just mint NFTs and expect magic and riches to fall out of the skies, pennies from heaven. It just ain't gonna happen. You have to promote it and push it like anything else. And you have to do the same. You really have to assume some of the responsibilities of being a gallerist. You have to use social media as one of the best ways that you can help promote it or band together with friends and do it in unison and take advantage of a network of various people in your community. You're gonna have to be proactive or it ain't gonna happen. So like in the gold rush, most of the people became wealthy from the suppliers, and that's what's happening a lot of the time now, where these people with dreams of, you know, gold in their eyes, and they're minting away and they're spending a lot of money doing so with little returns. Another thing you hear I've heard of from artists that are scared that what if they do an NFT and the NFT sells for more than their primary prices? I mean, artists are artists, and if you're making digital art, you shouldn't give a shit about one thing encroaching on another thing or cannibalizing your primary market. I mean, the only reason there is to do NFTs are if you make digital art and you want to disseminate it and you want to express it and communicate it to other people. If you're going to be so cautious in controlling your market and scared that your paintings or sculptures may compete with your digital output, don't bother, obviously. So one of my co-writers at ArtNet, Nate Freeman, every single week in his gossip column seems to complain about how NFT, he can't even bring himself to say the 3 letters, which I've never seen anything like this. And they're just little innocuous letters from the alphabet, calling it a fad and a gimmick and a bubble. I mean, when we get to the good part of NFTs coming up shortly, that, you know, there's a lot of great things happening. And I'm sure you're aware, whether before NFTs, I guarantee you that like 80% of you know people that have been working in the digital realm, whether it's digital video, animation, or prints, or photo manipulated imagery that gets outputted at a photo lab. These are digital artists, and this is a new platform, a new system for these people to just get their work out there. It's very simple. So you hear that it's a tool of capitalism and it's just a currency. I mean, Rembrandt was so money obsessed. In the book, Rembrandt's Enterprise by Svetlana Alpers, she wrote about the fact that his studio assistants would paint coins on the floor in an effort to get him to bend over and try to pocket them. And Dürer was like, his mother opened a shop selling his prints, and he would send people ahead before he would travel across Europe to sell his prints. He even made the comment that why should he make a painting when he can make a print, which takes a fraction of the time and he makes tremendously more money. Art and money have been in bed together since the Renaissance, since forever. and maybe they don't sleep in the same bed, but they've been fucking for centuries. This was, Bloomberg called NFTs getting a little bubblicious, which I thought was funny. All the rage. This is just.
These are all the rage, I'm sure you're aware right now. So DAOs literally stand for decentralized autonomous organization. You kind of think of them as curators or tastemakers of this emergent art landscape that we're seeing. They're headless organizations and there is no leader. So basically people come together, pool their capital, and then democratically vote on where that capital goes. And they basically use it as a way to crowdsource various collection strategies.
Crowdsourcing collection strategies. I know this thing called, it's a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization. I think this could actually be some kind of an organization that could supplant shares and companies. It's kind of like everyone gets tokens and there's no central leadership in the company. And like this group, Flamingo, which I know some of the members of, one of them is Donna Riddell, who is on the photography committee at MoMA. Another one is a professor, Aaron Wright, at the law school I went to, and that woman who was speaking on Bloomberg. I mean, it sounds pretty reductive, and a lot of it is. They also bought a CryptoPunk for $600,000. And when I first heard about it, I was flabbergasted until it went up to $8 million, but we'll get into that in a little bit. This is John Cleese from Monty Python, and he's making fun of Maurizio Catalan's Banana. And then he posted a sketch of the Brooklyn Bridge, making like poking fun at buyers in this space and about the cliche of you want to buy a bridge, and now he's selling a bridge. Meanwhile, his bridge is for sale, the bid's up to like 30 grand, and he's gonna end up making considerable amount of money, which is typical of the hypocrisy that you see in all of these kind of gratuitous criticisms that you get. Also, a lot of the art in this sector looks like screensavers or, you know, Grand Theft Auto 27 with people killing each other and worse. This is the DJ Calvin Harris. This just went into my inbox before I started talking, and now everyone is doing this. Like every Lindsay Lohan, every star, and it's going to be the rage. And look, it's the same in contemporary art. Brad Pitt is making art, and Kanye and Miley Cyrus and Paris Hilton. I mean, this is pretty lame, if I may say, in my humble opinion. I mean, I've seen better screensavers. This is, you should look up Amy Castor. I call her the high priestess of NFT haters. She's writing a book about the scoundrels of the NFT world. And I tried to speak to her on the phone and she almost hung up on me 12 times when I tried to explain why I think that, look, everything in life is a bell's curve. There are always going to be awful, worse than awful, and great and decent things in life. There's going to be great NFTs. There are now, and I'm going to show you some of them. And there's always, you know, it's so easy just to dismiss something in one fell swoop without just taking the time to learn. Since I started digging, and in September, I've now written 3 articles, given a lecture for my NYU class. I spent countless hours preparing for this talk, though it may not appear that way from what you're seeing. But trust me, like I have mentors, I have people that are tutoring me, I've been reading. Like one thing I say about this, the digital, like Beeple, like now he's like, apparently he's literally enrolled into taking art classes. I mean, he's just sold a piece of art for $70 million. You would think he would have the foresight and be behooved, it would be behooved, is that a word? You would think he would have fucking learned a little bit about fine art before he entered but look, everyone should do whatever they want and God bless them, all the power to these people. But before, as I started to get involved with NFTs, I just literally, at my age, it's pretty unusual that I'm teaching kids and getting these kids excited about a technology phenomenon. I have been studying, I've been reading, and I get like 1,000 emails. Get me onto Foundation, get me onto Nifty Gateway. It's like I'm putting in the labor the same way that I self-taught myself art history by teaching it and reading Jansen's. I'm learning the hard way by just doing the sweat equity of just trying to figure it out and understand it in the best, most open-minded way I can. And that's why I just spent an hour telling you what's awful about it. I guess this is pretty bad. Crypto sushi, like you can buy yellowtail jalapeno sashimi. I mean, from Nobu is a fucking NFT, excuse my language. I mean, for Christ's sake, this is the bottom. But you could, there's so much information. I mean, I am a great hater of Clubhouse because I've been attacked from head to toe from people that never read a thing I've written or seen a piece of art I've done or know anything about me. But like, you could learn, there are so many resources. This was just yesterday. Kelly Crow, great writer from the Wall Street Journal, was in a live Instagram, NFTs 24/7 on Clubhouse. You could always just pop in and start to learn and just Google and look. Okay, so people say, what do I do with, I don't want to have an art collection in my wallet. Meanwhile, there's no shipping cost, there's no storage cost. I mean, imagine how much it costs to run a fine art storage and a Freeport and insurance and all of these things. I'm not sure how insurance protects against losing your 12 C words, but that's another story for another lecture. But people say like, I mean, look, I'm surrounded by 100 little pieces in my office, drawings, posters, prints, paintings, sculptures. Every day I rub my nose against a piece of art, and people say like, what do you do with your NFT art? But believe me, there's going to be dedicated hardware within which to display this art, and there already is. Sorry, that's my Led Zeppelin music. But this is a company called Infinite Objects, and you could upload video onto these devices and have them on your desk or on your wall. So more and more as these things take hold, you are going to see more interesting ways. And look, if you bought that Vito Acconci video back in 1969, what are you supposed to do with it? It's like a tape format that's completely obsolete, and you were meant to just put it on your television set. So there are plenty of television sets today that have you could put a memory stick into a TV, and there you go. You have the most perfect device to view your art. It's the same as any artwork over the last 50 years that needs to be turned on, whether it's Dan Flavin, and NFTs are very close to like having a certificate of authenticity, which accounts for your ownership of what's nothing more than hardware appliance. So now I just want to tell you about some of the great people that I've met. I mean, I've been involved for 6 months, and I have met a couple of many extraordinary artists and professionals that are involved in this field. And this is Georg Bach. He's in Switzerland, and believe it or not, Switzerland is a kind of hotbed for the NFT universe. There's a lot of cryptos that come out of there, like Ethereum and Polkadot and all these other things, Cardano. And anyway, Georg, don't hold it against him, but he did used to work for Hauser and Wirth, and he is an independent curator. And on his profile, he identifies himself as a digital art advisor, which I've never seen that one before, which I liked. And he talks about like buying this stuff in 2018 for $50. He's not really a collector, he is a dealer, but not only is he an advisor, he's also a great thinker and historian, and he's working on a show that will be released in a bricks and mortar gallery on the history of generative digital art that dates back to the 50s and 60s. So imagine if you're like 90 years old and you've been making digital art for literally decades to no commercial avail and no opportunity. And now there are, I remember seeing like, when you look at a show like The Soul of a Nation, I mean, African-American artists of an older generation have faced untold racism in the art world. I mean, it's shocking how bad and how racist the art world still is with the ownership of galleries. Whenever you look at an online auction or go to an auction house, people of color are so underrepresented. It's still shocking. And in the same sense, digital generative artists or people that are doing this kind of work and been engaging for decades have no audience because there's no market up to this point for people that make digitally based artworks. And like this morning, someone called me up from Iran and said, help, I want to sell my painting on NFT. And I mean, for Christ's sakes, this is not just the kind of like golden ticket that anyone who's ever made an artwork in their life will have a place to sell it outside of the normal context for something like that. It's ridiculous. I mean, if you make art that is suitable to this distribution system, then you're in luck. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. Sure, you can make some kind of a you could wed your NFT to a painting and make some conceptual project. But if you're not doing it conceptually, what the hell are you doing? This isn't just a kind of like, what do you call it? Panacea for just the difficulty. Nothing has changed in my career in terms of how hard it is, how much work is entailed to make a living creatively expressing yourself, no matter what the hell you're doing. And you hear a case like Beeple, like, first of all, whatever his name is, Beeple was like, for decades, was working for major brands, major companies, doing creative work. He is a digital master. I mean, maybe he's not up to art historical chops, but he's very talented, undoubtedly. I don't think he's $70 million talented, but he's been toiling away for decades before he sold his first artwork. And you cannot deny the fact that he is very technically competent at what he does. So, you know, Georg has never sold an NFT. It's funny because he says he never talks and shows the art he owns because he's Swiss and discretion is how they roll. But he's listed, like, again, take a screenshot. He's listed all kinds of artists that he has engaged with, and I'm sure he owns art by all these people. There's another generative project of pizza NFTs. This is an artificial intelligence generated series of nude portraits by Robbie Barrett. George Bach was the first one to actually showcase these CryptoPunks. And look, these are the stupidest looking things you've ever seen in your life, but they are historically the first kind of foray of creative output on the blockchain. So these 10,000 characters were created algorithmically, generated through computer code onto the blockchain, and that's the first time it ever happened. So this is just a load of them. They sell individually. They were given away in the beginning, and they were generated, you know, the parameters were put into a computer, and none of them are the same, but it's spit out just by chance 88 zombies, 24 apes, and 9 aliens, and now and these people never thought of themselves as fine artists in the way that we would normally associate with the term. They were just app designers, if you want to call it what it is. Now they call themselves creative technologists, which is kind of bullshit nomenclature. But anyway, they were first, they did this project, and you can't dismiss it. It's there, and it's super, like, how many times have you seen profile images of various people using some kind of derivative of these things? These are other artists that George Bach mentioned. That Eve Sussman is a very well-known video artist, and she took an existing piece, one of her most well-known videos, and she atomized it and she tokenized it by taking little elements, excerpts from her film. And when I talk about with George, like, he actually lost his password for his iteration of this piece of one of the atoms. And he knows of someone who lost $30 million by losing their password. And Tara O is a woman, another crypto artist who tries to tokenize plant life. And a lot of artists are really getting into dealing with ecological manifestations of this phenomenon. Then there's another piece by Alexander Mordvinstev, the cat piece. And he's done some other very renowned for this piece, Dreamscape, I think it's called, another artificial intelligence work. Gretchen Andrew is another practitioner who is very active. This work, The Next American President. This is another work of hers where she invaded an auction scene, intervention into a Christie sale. And again, like, digital art has been around for decades, but this whole system of using, like, when I get to the next person to talk about, okay, so this is an amazing guy that I met through Instagram, even though most of these tech people don't even engage with Instagram. Devin Mitchum is an engineer. He's an engineer for Google for 18 years. And he talks about blockchains as a new layer of the internet. And you could even, like, you could register your own name instead of using a wallet address, which is like a string of 50 numbers and letters. You can register your own name, similar to the way you did with websites and in the beginning of internet. And so he calls it, a very interestingly, a new layer of the internet, and for public and pseudo sharing, anonymous identities and sharing collectives. And again, screenshot this because the guy is just fascinating. He's been collecting NFTs since the beginning, and he's never sold a single piece. And so people say that this is just a place for flippers and this has nothing to do with the art world as we know it, when in fact this has everything to do with the art world as we know it, us older people and younger people alike. This is just new blood being brought into the universe, into the landscape of people that engage with art. And, you know, like kids today don't want to own cars. When I was younger, I used to steal the car when I was 16 and go to clubs, and that was like your ticket to freedom. And now most kids I know don't even have their driver's license. They just use a sharing app. So the notion of ownership, I don't think is being disregarded. I just think that younger generations, and Devin is not young, he's in his mid 40s, people are just, they're very comfortable in owning digital material. So then he talks about the different websites. Nifty Gateway does these kind of larger editions. Super Rare do only one of ones. And then there's Rareable, which is like a bazaar, he says, where anyone could upload stuff to Rareable. Anyone could upload stuff to Zora. Foundation is not terribly strict. Every time an artist is let on Foundation, they get 5 invitations to invite more people. Async is a place where you can make art in different layers. So you can buy different elements from one particular piece, as many as you like, and configure it yourself. And OpenSea, again, there's no curatorial gatekeeper. You can upload whatever you want. And it's like a kind of, you could post all of your NFTs on OpenSea and exchange it with people. So this is a Beeple that Devin bought for just a couple $100, and this was in October. It's called Politics is Bullshit, and it was released, I think it was like the first release in October. And what's incredible about this whole world is that changes happen in nano fractions of seconds. I mean, I couldn't give this lecture again in 2 weeks because there would be a million things that have changed. So these are Devin's picks for some of the art that he's liked the most. And Pack is an artist that will be releasing a piece at Sotheby's coming up soon. And he did this really funny thing. You see the 3 indistinguishable cubes on the whatever, right or left, whatever part of your screen it's showing up on. And he did the same exact image, and he called one cheap, and that was $499. The same image with a different title called The Expensive was $10,000. And then the unsold was $1 million. Another one of the early kind of in the same league as the CryptoPunks were these hash masks. And again, these were like 16,000 algorithmically generated figures that was put together by a pool of different artists. And they look a little Basquiat-y, but a lot of them have symbolism that relates to game culture. And another one is Gucci Ghost, which is some snowboarder or whatever. Anyway, these are his choices. And he's never sold a single thing, some of which have become pornographic. Oh, and there's mine, Scam Likely. I can't forget that one. That was one of my second releases with Nifty Gateway. So this is an artist that was formerly Rob Myers, who now identifies as Rhea Myers. And she was a very early adapter to the technology, like one of the literally first. This was a piece, Proof of Existence, in 2014. She made a hash of her genome into the Bitcoin blockchain. This is a certificate of inauthenticity. And Rhea will be in a show that I'm curating that's coming up in Cologne next month on the 23rd of April at Nagel-Draxler Gallery, which will be probably one of the very first group show, physical shows in a gallery. So it'll be indistinguishable from an art show of any variety. You'll walk in and you would never know that it's actually an NFT show, and there'll be an accompanying release of NFTs from all of the artists on OpenSea probably. And in this case, there's a certificate of inauthenticity. There's a lot of critique going on, social critique, environmental critique, of a lot of critiques about NFTs themselves, very kind of like navel-gazing, self-referential, but nothing that doesn't happen daily in the contemporary art market, art world as we know it in the past. So in this case, he's speaking about issues like Jeff Koons and his Hadid maids, I call them, because they're all fabricated, and with the balloon dog and Duchamp's urinal. He sold his soul back in 2014. You may have heard Grimes, who sold some crappy computer art for $6 million recently, and she tried to sell her soul at Michelle Macaron. I'm not sure either of them have souls, or just joking, everybody. Since I can only see myself on the screen, I don't feel like there's anybody watching anyway. So anyway, there were no takers when Grimes tried to sell her soul in an art gallery, but Reyes sold it in 2014. There's another one, the smart contract. She did a piece that the contract itself is art. Critical coins, you can buy like nomenclature of criticism for art. Tokenized. I'm also, yeah, like I said, this whole presentation will be online. So if I've gone too quickly or some of the things were a bit text heavy. Kevin Abash is in the middle of a major release on OpenSea, where he's releasing 1,000 works over a week or two. That's a self-portrait. This is a piece where he did called I Am a Coin in 2018. Again, he's a conceptual artist, a photographer, and first he tokenized the piece called I Am a Coin, and then he made a rubber stamp and printed it in his blood. Again, you see these kind of tropes in conceptual art throughout the decades. Nothing is new, more or less. Things are just different. And things generally, when they're informed, as he is, about art history, they piggyback on movements and works that have come before them. Just the way the kind of blockchain system works. One block attaches to another block, and they're all there forever on the blockchain. This was a piece called Why Lambo by Kevin, 2018. And there was a term within the crypto bros, they would say when Lambo. When Lambo would mean like, when are you getting the big bucks from your crypto investments and have the dough to buy a Lamborghini. So he tokenized hashtag Lambo and as a proxy for success identity in his words. And then he used the number of the token for that hashtag and turned it into a neon piece. Yellow Lambo. All these people want a yellow Lamborghini for some stupid reason. This was a piece that he released, Forever Rose, on Valentine's Day in 2018. It sold for $1 million, and he donated all the money to help kids in disadvantaged schools to get access to computers and some of this technology that a lot of us take for granted. So really, you're going to see, again, like a Bell's curve of good intentions, charitable efforts, environmentally conscious efforts, critical work. This was the piece that's now being released. This is his language, cryptographic keys truncated and sublimated into a lingua arcana that serves as a repository of sacred knowledge. Contain cryptographic messages. And he also talks about hidden within the work are kind of rewards for those people that don't flip the work. So unbeknownst to a lot of the buyers, I found out about this and kind of wrote about it in a veiled kind of way in my last article. But the longer you own the piece, it may kick back some, it may have a reward system built into it, kind of tokenomics, which I've commented upon in my last article that emanates from the psychologist B.F. Skinner. And this is part of the underlying concept that you can understand of Kevin's never fear art. I mean, at the end of the day, this is just art. People making art, people having a way to communicate their art with the most people, whether you're in any corner of the globe. It's just really something that should be embraced with open minds. You could dismiss any aspect of the art world and reduce it to money laundering, profit mongering. It has nothing to do with the content of the work. And my point is that you can't write anything off that is. It just is. It's taking advantage of the internet in a way that's never existed before. And artists are going to grab their hands around anything technologically, socially, politically, economically. This is just what art is about, embracing things just like this. And I can't understand why people are so freaked out about it and up in arms. And I have people literally trolling me and making personal attacks against me. It's fucking annoying. This is Osinachi is an artist based in Nigeria who makes these animations. This one, I have the animation. The other images, he'll be in the exhibition that I'm curating at Nagel-Draxler. This piece is animated where there's like a civil servant stamping with a wax thing, but I don't have the GIF file. This is animated. You can use your imagination to imagine what's happening in the animation. But you just see a really wide diversity of art that is coming. This is just stuff that doesn't look like Beeple and doesn't look like the crap that you've seen as the obvious way to write off what is just a really interesting initiative that is only going to grow in quality over time, like everything. Darren Bader, he was meant to be in the Venice Biennale, but he didn't get his augmented reality piece together in time. Shows at Sadie Coles and Blum Poe and Andrew Krebs in New York. This is one of his NFTs, which is he's playing around with meaning, categories, language. He's a conceptual artist that was born for this medium because his work is very conceptual in the most reductive physical sense imaginable, where you could just be buying I mean, like Tino Segal, who's in a relational aesthetics artist who has sold a kiss. And when you buy one of Tino's works, you can't even get a certificate of authenticity. You just have to have the contract witnessed by a notary. You don't even get a photo. You don't even get the rights to display it. Everything is tightly controlled by dictates of the artist. And Darren Bader is someone who is similar in practice. These are 3 separate animation pieces that he's released on Zora.
No.
And another misconception about NFTs are that they're expensive. I mean, I haven't bought many, but the things I have bought have been in the low hundreds of dollars. And it's just a misconception. You can go on to Instagram and buy masterpieces for under $1,000 or $500. And it's the same thing in NFTs. And you only hear about, you hear about $450 million paintings and $70 million, video stills, but you don't really hear about great art that is presently available. These are all separate pieces by Darren Bader. He's just a really fascinating artist making really interesting work relating to a lot of issues that happen to coincide with where technology is expanding. Sarah Friend, ClickMine, which is an environmental exploration. She makes games out of environmental devastation and various issues relating to global warming. This is another game she made, Are You a Rock? Just artists using the gaming aspect of technology that have been so prevalent with younger culture, younger kids in the recent past. Artists that are really using this system as content, as a medium towards an end, not just for novelty, not in any sense. They're thoughtful, considered works of art that exist in their own right, whether they're sold as an NFT or they're stuck on a computer screen or a photograph or anything else. It's totally irrelevant. That's the point of this whole argument. Art is art, end of discussion. NFTs are just a way for people that make art of this variety to have a way to sell it and to show it and to disseminate it. This is another gift piece by Sarah Friend. You could take a picture of the text and read it at your own leisure. I promise we're almost done. This is Eva Beresin, who is an artist that I found on Instagram not much more than a year ago, will be showing together in a two-person show at Charim Gallery in Vienna that opens April 16th. And I met her on Instagram. I fell hard in love with her paintings. She happens to be one of the most glorious, generous human beings I've ever met, which is kind of odd considering she's an artist. Just kidding. Having this weird conversation with my computer. And she's a painter, but she's always made iPad drawings like David Hockney. If you're buying a David Hockney iPad drawing, wouldn't you rather own the computer file that it was created upon, or just some stupid output from Paste Gallery? You could buy the computer file that David made his piece in, the indigenous technology within which he created his work, and then print it yourself. So these are paintings made digitally by Eva Beresin, and she's a painter. So when the woman this morning and caught me on the wrong side of the bed said, like, how do I get my paintings minted? And I said, I don't know, which was, I guess, a little bit brusque of me. I didn't mean it, but it's just 1,000 DMs later, it gets a little bit annoying without even saying hello to me or having some manners. But like, Eva Beresin is a brilliant painter in the greatest European tradition, like Ensor and various Soutine. And yet she's also embracing technology, which is independent of her body of work, which exists as paintings. And she makes these animations, which, what better way to sell this work than in the format of an NFT? She wasn't digging for money or trying to find an easy solution to cash in on her digital art. She was just like, all the art that I made in my entire life, when I made a couple of bucks in February selling them on Nifty Gateway, I was so caught by surprise. I was in tears practically. I had no intention of doing that to make money. Little did I ever in my wildest dreams imagine that I would be able to sell my video art regularly in the format that I'm doing it in. I'm 59 years old, for Christ's sakes, and it's just like, it feels like a gift. Like my whole life has changed in a certain respect. I'm not like some zealot and I'm not running for office, but like, used with the right, you know, in the right sense, for the right reasons, this could really be a positive thing in the lives of people like mine and like Eva Beresin, 65 years old now. And just from me finding her on Instagram, calling her up and say, I love the way the feet are always so out of proportion to the rest of the body. I mean, I wrote her a letter and said, like, how old are you? Where do you come from? Do you have a family? Do you not have a, and I mean, we just really got to know each other, and I haven't even met her and had 3 phone calls with her to date. And yet her life has been turned upside down like mine has. She now has 3 gallery shows this year alone, one coming up at M&B Gallery in Los Angeles and in Athens and in Holland and various other opportunities that her sensibility is joyful, funny, almost childish in its purity, but she's a great painter and a great artist. I have a piece in Kantor Gallery right now, which was curated by Annika Meyer and Johan, that's in one of these metaverse websites, Decentraland. The piece is coming up for auction. The bid is 1 ETH is like $1,600. It's a unique piece. I mean, these things are just, I mean, look, that's a lot of money, generally speaking, but not in the art world per se. That's an invitation for the show coming up in Cologne. Jerry Saltz, he wrote on Twitter today, don't make fun of me in your talk, which I never would have done if he didn't put that in my mind. That's actually a piece I made some years ago, which is a digital artwork, which I made to accompany one of my articles, embedded in my articles like I've been doing for a decade. And it says, instead of hairpiece was the original sign when John and Yoko had a piece in, it's Jerry Saltz and Roberta Smith. And Jerry said, don't make a joke of me, but the joke is that I had to, since he brought it up in the first place. When Jerry jumps in and starts making NFTs, it's either the end of the debate or the beginning of the end. So I just think like everyone is interested. I think Jerry's even in the audience. And it's like, this isn't for kids. This isn't a flash in the pan. This isn't a fad, a gimmick. It's not a gimmick. What's the gimmick? It's just art being presented in a digital format on the internet. End of discussion, end of lecture. Don't shoot the messenger. Don't send me hate mail tomorrow. I've had enough trolls to last a lifetime, and That's it, folks. I'm finished. I
Great.
mean, I see a bunch of questions, like 85 of them. And like I said, we don't have much more time, but we can take a couple of questions now. But I don't know how to end my, oh yeah. Stop share. But honestly, write me, and I will respond to every DM or email that I get. You can ask me any question, anytime, and I'll do my best to answer it. So thank you so much for listening. That was one long fucking sentence that I just spewed out. And maybe at the worst, it could cure insomnia. But anyway, thank you so much. I really, truly appreciate having such a great audience, I think, because all I could see is my annoying looking self.
Yeah.
But thank you so much. Thank you, thank you.
Well, thank you, Kenny. We just have a little time left because our students have to go back to class, and our other
I have to go to sleep.
will come back at a later time once they've researched this, since it's rather complicated. So
You need to invite me again and give me a
we
full-time teacher
certainly
position.
will. Evan, do you want to read a few questions?
Yeah, so sifting through, let's start with this first. What do you predict for art institutions interacting with NFTs, or how will this impact them in general?
And that's so, well, first of all, I've already heard of a bunch of initiatives already of galleries that are beginning to open their own platforms or to help facilitate the releasing of NFTs from their artists. Within 5 minutes, every gallery from Larry G to the smallest gallery will, any artist that engages with technology in the making of their works will, this will benefit them one way or the other, for sure, in every way. And think of museums that are in the worst financial condition they have been in since there were museums. Think of, like, instead of selling postcards and posters, like museums could release NFTs, limited editions of their masterpieces, or all the art. Think how many zillions of works are buried in the storages of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Museum of Modern Art, the Whitney Museum. And that's just a few museums in New York City, where I am. But think about the museums in the world could bring to life and into the homes of people and find a way to monetize, and instead of deaccessioning the jewels of the collections from the Metropolitan Museum down to various other institutions across the globe in this terrible, tragic pandemic that's cost so many lives, and it's basically just brought to its knees collectively the entire institutional world with the lockdowns. And museums and galleries, this is not a zero-sum game in any sense of the term. This is not just the internet sites benefiting at the expense of galleries and museums. In fact, it's the opposite. All museums should employ NFT, staff to try to utilize this technology to benefit the museums in their deepest, darkest financial need, period.
So why didn't all the digital art being produced, marketed, and distributed for decades prior to NFTs generate this same amount of attention and excitement? What problems are NFTs really solving for artists, collectors, and galleries that weren't already being addressed?
Well, first of all, there's been such a reticence. Like, I've been making video art. You saw some terrible thing I did in 1993. I've been doing this my whole career. I think I've sold like 3 memory sticks in my entire life. This is a 24/7, like Instagram is open, you can present your art and have it seen around the clock. And what's changed is that the auction record for video art is, I think, 1.3 million for a Nam June Paik, and that was a sculpture. For a straight video work, I think the record is 700,000 for, what's his name, with this, everything in slow motion and people getting doused in water and fire. I'm having a little lapse of memory. But anyway, Bill Viola. The record is $700,000. So there's not, people love paintings. People are always going to love paintings. Paintings are never going to die, and they've been around for eternity, and they will be. But this is just something else for people that engage in a different fashion. So the reason, and first of all, the technology wasn't there. Second of all, like for all the people like myself that made largely digital video, I mean, people, there was no easy way to own a video work when the formats were changing, you know, as quickly as the weather. So, I mean, there was Beta and VHS and these little miniature digital cassettes I used to use, and one after the other came and went, and they're all obsolete. DVDs and those bigger ones that look like silver records and blah, blah, Blu-ray, and there's just a billion. So there's been no practical way to encapsulate the content of artists that make work that is either computer-based or video-based. This is the first easy, practical, pragmatic way. Of course, we've mentioned that there are ecological problems, but there's an ecological problem shipping a load of work to Basel and throwing the crates away afterward. And again, one doesn't rationalize the other, or, you know, I'm not trying to, we're a long way away from a perfect scenario, but this has given hope to people like in my lifetime at this late stage in my late middle life. Did I ever think that there would be a market? The art world looks at me. I once did a piece where I wrote the word dealer on my face, like Prince, who used to walk around with the word slave on his face when he wanted to get out of a record contract with Sony that was too, that he was subjugated in his contractual obligation. Because in the art world, they use the fact that I do different things to survive as an easy way to write me off and to dismiss me. It gets to the point where you don't even take yourself seriously doing the things that you're most passionate about and care the most about. So this is a license to people not to steal, but to create and to disseminate and to make a living for the hard work that they've been doing for decades.
So with artists like Namjoon Paik, Bill Viola, and Pippilotti Rist, and many others, how will NFTs affect these artists? Will it make digital art more desired than paintings, for instance?
Well,
or are NFTs...
Namjoon Paik is dead, so it's going to take more than an NFT to benefit him at this point. But look, people always are going to love ease of use, portability. Nothing, like I said, let me just show you one thing. I have to just plug something in before we go. But like, this is where I am. I make digital art. That's a Christopher Wool poster from his first tech show. These early Joe Bradley work, Mary Heilman, Cecily Brown, Cheyenne Julian, Tracy Emin, Catherine Bradford, Jonathan Lyndon Chase, William Popel, Paul Thek, Zaha Hadid, blah, blah, blah. Will this replace painting? Of course it's not going to replace painting. Nothing will replace anything. It's not about one thing eliminating another thing. It's about augmentation and about, this is just giving a new lease on life to makers of digital works. Vote for me for digital president.
What do you think about the openly desperate scramble on Twitter for people to get their NFTs seen? Do you think it's sad or actually something people should embrace? It's quite different. It's a quite
different. Life is sad. Life is sad. And it's no harder or easier for any artist of any stripe to get their work seen, heard. How is it any different for an emerging artist if you're not one of the chosen few artists that have a waiting list? Or, I mean, that's 0.00% of the artists. I mean, how is it any more desperate or sad than anyone else who's doing anything else in any walk of life? It's never easy. There's no, there's no free lunch. Anything that's too good to be true is too good to be true. And this isn't one of them. Twitter schmitter. I mean, it's very, very hard for me. I've been doing this my whole life. I found it very, very difficult to be taken seriously because I've had to revert to selling art to make a living during the course of my career. And there are plenty of other people in the digital sector that have gotten by, like Beeple himself, being an artist for hire. So yeah, we're all desperate. I'm desperate. We're all sad. Some sadder than others, but look, we do what we have to do in any way we can. Like any field, some will have an easier go than others. Some will get lucky, some will get unlucky. Some will get discovered when it's too late. Some will get discovered too early. Same way that the cookie crumbles for everybody else, whether you're a sculptor, whether you're a painter, whether you're anything, or it's all the same, just different.
We have time for one more question.
What do you think of NFTs as a form of authentication and provenance for physical artworks?
I just like, art is art, you know, and I think it's problematic when you think about, like, I have paintings and drawings all over the place. First of all, like, I mean, I just think it's too late. There's $1 trillion of art in circulation, and to start like adding the complexity of a new layer of, I think from new works going forward, you can register, I mean, everything on the blockchain. The cool thing is that all the provenance, you could find every single transaction for any given NFT throughout its entire history. Sometimes the buyers and the sellers retain the right of anonymity, but oftentimes they identify themselves. Because like I said, you can register your own name that would represent your wallet and represent you as the buyer and seller of various pieces. So this technology, the blockchain, definitely will have some significance as far as proving provenance in the future. But I mean, I don't see it really making sense if you're, you know, it's just it's almost like an extra layer. If you're buying a painting, you have an invoice from the gallery, and that should be enough. I mean, I just think it's too complicated to try to like attach an NFT to every existing thing, and then the painting will get sold and the NFT won't get transferred, and there's extra gas fees and transaction costs. It just seems superfluous.
Well, that is terrific. Thank you so much, Kenny, and thank you for your audience for attending. It seems from many questions that we haven't been able to read. You've done a great job, and this, I guess, is part of the new normal, when whatever that may be. So on behalf of SBA,
the new abnormal.
We will wish you all a good night, and to my students, please attend your class. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. School of Visual Arts, and Suzanne Anker, great artist who's been dealing with, your art has dealt with biology and technology for decades yourself.
That's correct.
So you need to get on top of it.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.